I'm Moroccan, brother. I'm from Morocco. We started growing cannabis probably 800, 900 years ago, and it's in the day-to-day things. I'll give you an example. When
Okay.
you're a kid, you're teething, a lot of pain, can't sleep. They put a little bourbon, right? In Kentucky, they put a little bourbon. Let's just go with that. But in Morocco, they will put a little bit of. It's like they will take it, put a little bit of flour in there, some hash and tea, or even just to blow that smoke on your face. That will make you sleep when you had a little baby. So that's like anchored in the traditions more than anything. And then you open to the world and you start studying plants and genomics, and then cannabis just fell actually in my lap. I've been for the past decade I've been working in genomics in plants, soybeans, olives, name it.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't you take that entire decade of expertise and serve the cannabis industry to, deal with bottlenecks and enable scale? That's about it.
So this is like an ingrained cultural component of Moroccan life.
Absolutely. Look, there is a stigma about stoners. Oh, you're a stoner, whatever. There is a lot of architect stoners, engineers, people working in SpaceX. I mean, I went to school with some of the brilliant people around the world.
Yeah.
Like, I really went to school with some very, very smart people. They're all stoners. When you look at them now, they are between Boeing and Amazon and Linux and all these full stack developer people and stuff. It's like, it's okay to smoke weed. It's all right. That's why it's legal in the state of Illinois.
Yeah. No, well, and it's funny that you talk about it in that aspect of like all the people that achieve so much while being cannabis consumers. And I think about just something that I heard a couple weeks ago where somebody was referring to cannabis as an intoxicant, right? Comparing it to alcohol in the same way that alcohol poisons the body to get you to an inebriated feeling. It's not the same with cannabis. Cannabis doesn't do something toxic to your body.
Well, the intoxication from cannabis is you're going to be super hungry. You're going to go through half of your fridge and probably pass out and sleep.
Yeah.
When you're high, you don't take your car and you drive around and you hit people. You know what I'm saying? Alcohol is terrible.
Yeah.
You go to the bar, you drink, you take your car, you're most likely to hit someone on the way. DUI, name it. You get really high. Let's say extreme cases of being high. You're just going to fall asleep in your couch. Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I'll take that over any DUI or any altercation with law enforcement or just some.
Alcohol in general, as it
Absolutely.
the things
It's
that it
just
does.
a person who's taking a dog for a walk at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're drunk driving. Just imagine that situation. You don't want to be there. So if we're going to keep demonizing cannabis, just look at the other side of what people are doing. Like,
Yeah.
whoever is putting the legislation behind this, we need you to be aware, to be educated, to be able to make the right recommendations for decision makers. So we're not with the laws. It is just not fair
Yeah.
at this point. A lot of people have been victims to. Well, there's a lot of people behind bars because they were carrying a joint at a certain point of their lives, and
Yeah.
is it worth to take
Somebody's
someone's
entire life.
entire life
Yeah.
and just throw it in the trash because they decided to smoke a joint? Maybe because they had a lot of pain, a shoulder pain or knee pain, or maybe some trauma. But we didn't give people the chance to study this. I'll give you an example, the VA. Let's just go to something very
Yeah.
sensitive here.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, a lot of veterans. They're suffering from physical and emotional pain. VA should be working with cannabis industry and researchers on cannabinoids and their interaction with our endocannabinoid system to find solutions. People on, I mean, if we don't care about giving a prescription to get an opioid, and we have problem with telling people just take this edible or this oil or this joint, then the problem is beyond the ethics and what's right, what's wrong. This is who is lobbying for what and who is making the decision for whom, and it's very messy. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, no. But I mean, but it is just to say that like there is so much about a plant that is needlessly demonized,
Absolutely.
and we'll talk more about your work as we get into our conversation for the 98th episode of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives and tie it all back to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. And the gentleman joining me today that calls Carbondale home, Oussama Badad. I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you for
so
having me.
jumping into this, right? You talk about being a scientist and working with folks. Is that what brought you to Carbondale? Was being a scientist and doing sciencey stuff here? Like, how did you get here, man? Of all places.
It's funny. I'm gonna tell you this. Like, people think is this a joke? So, I worked for American foundations in Africa. I volunteered. I worked with the NIH, with the NLM, going teaching for teachers, training for trainers, kind of stuff to implement bioinformatics and genomics in Africa. The last time I went there, I went to Nigeria in 2014, was in the middle of the Ebola outbreak, the Boko Haram civil war in Nigeria between Muslims and Christians, and it was rough. It was really rough for us. Some of us were really sick, malaria. Me personally. So it was really tough. Just telling you what led me to Carbondale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm doing all of these trips and volunteering with these foundations, and I came back home, and the call for the Fulbright program was open. Fulbright program is Senator William Fulbright, who initiated this program after the World War to bring bright people to the United States. To build what America is today.
Yeah.
If the Fulbright program helped the United States to build the knowledge that we see today in this country.
Yeah.
So I applied for the scholarship. I'm stressed. I don't like to be under lights and cameras. I'm an introvert, believe it or not. And I went to that meeting or that interview, and there is the attaché of the embassy there, and there is like the director of Masisi, which is the Moroccan American Commission for Cultural Exchange. It's just very important people. And I'm sitting there, first year PhD student. I'm like, oh my God. So they asked me a question: what happened in Nigeria? So I start telling my story, and what happened in Nigeria is amazing, dude. I went to a chapel. I gave a talk at a chapel. Like, people were just interested in, like, what are you doing here? You're Muslim serving a Christian community in the middle of a civil war with the Muslim community. And I'm like, it doesn't matter your beliefs or your color. It's the purpose. I want to be where I am of use.
Yeah.
So I just start talking about that experience. And you know what? We didn't even talk about my research at all. 25 minutes, I get out of the interview. I didn't talk about my research. People are like, why are you out early? People take 45 minutes at least in that interview. So I'm like, okay, I probably missed it. A week later, I get the nomination email. A week later, I am a Fulbright grantee. I'm on board of a 747 coming to the United States.
Wow.
Fulbright scholarship. It's a very prestigious scholarship.
Yeah.
Some of the president of the United States were Fulbright scholars. A lot of heads of states all around the world, Fulbright scholars. Nobel Prizes, Fulbright scholars. So the program brought me here. But the funny thing is, we have 3 choices. You can pick 3 universities, and then you can go to one of them. So we had collaborators in Harvard and DBMI, which is Department of Biomedical Informatics, where my dear friend did his PhD Fulbright year. So I was most likely to go there just to continue the partnership.
I don't think there are a lot of people in this world that are like, I had 2 choices, Harvard or SIU.
And there is another. It was between SIU and here, between Harvard and here. But then I did a little bit of research about this area, and Carbondale, dude. When you do research about Carbondale, when you're from the other side of the planet, it's a different feel.
Yeah.
It's like Animal House, literally. And I was like, I like the outdoors. I'm a farmer, but I just pushed it a little bit too far in plants. I dive deep into that. We'll talk about it later. But I love the landscape. And then the school is good, and there is a lot of partying here, which is a good experience for someone who's going to come from the other side of the planet as an ambassador for his own culture and try to melt into this culture. I needed to do my research, but I loved it. But this was not why I came here. I came here because Dr. David Lightfoot. He passed away last year. Was an advisor, a friend, a traveling companion. Like we were thick, and he was a great scientist, the last of the Mohicans, the last geneticist. He, like when he died, all of that old school genetics gone.
Wow.
He was my Moroccan supervisor's supervisor 15 years ago. And when I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go there. I look at his resume and all his contributions, and the guy been inventor of the year. He's a soybean inventor for the past 30 years here at SIU. Like, I'm like, you know what? That's what I need to go.
Yeah.
I flew from Casablanca to New York, from New York to Chicago, from Chicago to St. Louis, and took a BART shuttle from St. Louis to University Village, August 5th, 2015. I got here 2 o'clock in the morning. That's my story with Carbondale. Two ladies saved me that night. I was supposed to go to the leasing office to get the key to my apartment. It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And like, there is no one. They're coming out of the gym. It's a 24 hours.
Yeah.
I asked them a question. They were like, one of the people working in the leasing office lives right there. Antoine, who's going to become a dear friend of mine. He hooked me up. We went in there, got me the keys, everything. You're good to go. And that's my story with Carbon. That's how I got here.
That is such a Carbondale story. I came from halfway across the world, showed up at 2 a.m., and here I was.
Yeah, I feel like Carbondale is a great place for misfits like me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what they call people, like nerds. But I think that we're just, some people are evolving in a not a dimension, but a sphere that is parallel to what you see. But there is no overlapping. And every time there is no overlap, you go for the weirdo. But, sometimes you talk to people and they're like,
yeah.
Sometimes you have that constant feeling. Sometimes with your own self, you're like, whoa, am I really a weirdo? Am I crazy? Why am I talking to myself? But it's just like the thought and the process is so deep that's just like you carry on. It's like you don't care if there is no overlap in somewhere. And I don't mind to be the weirdo or the whatever, but
well,
it's cool.
The other side of that, right, is that I think you pinpointed that this is a place where you can just be whatever that person that you need to be is.
Absolutely.
Right? And I talk with people about this all the time, that it's small enough that you're going to find, it's big enough that you're going to find whatever the people are that you need to be connected with in here. But it's small enough that you can still interact with everybody in every way throughout
Absolutely.
it. And like people are just going to welcome you in.
Well, this is what happened, man. I came here, spent a wonderful year doing research, publishing, traveling, giving lectures here and there.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back home after the end of my Fulbright scholarship.
Oh.
It was a year, intensive research, but I made sure that I see part of the country, and I just, I don't know, I give you examples. When you come to Carbondale, the smallest tour of America you can do is take 57 and go south. Stop in Memphis, go down, stop in Jackson, Mississippi, continue all the way down. You are Baton Rouge, or you are in New Orleans, come around Alabama and come up here through Tennessee. That was the last road trip that I did. My wife and I, we were still dating back then. We were broke. We didn't have anything, but I needed to see part of the country instead of just flying and go give a talk in a conference and come back. I wanted to see the country because it's part of our mission to come here. Is when you come back, you need to bring a piece of the culture so you can educate people and break the ice and remove the stigma. You know? And being here in Carbondale, you're in the heart of the heartland, brother.
Yeah.
Chicago, Memphis, Louisville, Nashville. You're right here in the middle. You can fly whatever you want. And people don't really they don't zoom on this area. They just...
Yeah.
You know, when you fly over, you don't see anything. A lot of woods, a lot of lakes, and small towns here and there. There's a lot of love, man. There's a lot of love and a lot of bright people in these areas. The only problem is we don't aggregate.
Yeah.
Isolated little outliers if you are doing multiple component analysis. You have clusters, and then you have outliers here and there.
Well, and that was one of the things, I had John Jackson with the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute on somewhere in the 60s range, I think, and he was talking about, just years past when one of SIU's functions was weaving the communities of Southern Illinois together, just through engagement, just going out and being part of communities and seeing what resources the university could offer and so on and so forth. So there's a blueprint to weave people together that exists out there somewhere.
We should capitalize on it. We should build more layers on it.
Why? Yeah. I mean, that's and especially now. Go ahead. Sorry.
Here is another thing, like to talk about cannabis right here. We're talking about communities and how we can help this area to elevate the area, right? And cannabis is the only. It's a tide. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis is a tide, and there's a lot of boats sitting right here.
Mm-hmm.
And with the tide, all the boats arise, right?
Yeah.
We can use that industry to help this entire community with the help of the university. Southern Illinois University is at the heart of this entire area.
Yeah.
As far as the university is doing well, the entire industries around this area are doing well.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to keep that heart pumping blood towards all of these organs, all these little communities around.
Yeah.
We can use cannabis, build a program at SIU. And I'm not talking about certificates. I'm not talking about 6 months, 8 months, bring people in, tell them stories and give them a Ganji or certificate and be like, you're ready for work. No, I'm talking about including this in undergrad programs, master programs, PhD programs, bring in research. We have access. Some folks here, I'll cite Kyle Baker, dear friend of mine, and I appreciate you for the introduction.
Absolutely, man.
We are willing to bring our networks here to help the university build programs in. You can build with hemp, right? Architecture, hempcrete.
Yeah.
The herd out of the plant, we can break it down to mix it with some certain of binders and water, and you have a concrete block, a hempcrete block. You don't have to worry about isolation. You don't have to care about the winter and the summer here because it's good isolation. This shirt right here, 100% hemp fiber. Looks like linen. It's a little rough. I love linen. It's one of my favorite fabrics. This is a little robust, a little rough, but it looks good. You will never tell that's not linen.
Yeah.
So here, architecture. We can have textile industry, animal feed, animal bedding. We can cannabinoids, the extraction. So we can build a lot of industries on this one plant.
Yeah.
But we need to get the university on board. They need to understand that building a relationship with private companies is what making the difference today in the ranking of universities. When you go to Harvard, Cornell, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, these universities, they're not big because they have the smartest people. No, because when they had an opportunity a long time ago to partner with a private company, they did. They did it. They're building all these relationships with private companies, and those private companies, they are dealing with the industry day in and day out. So they bring that need to the university. The university with the established systems of R&D can solve problems. And we did this at SIU. I worked with Professor Maxim in his lab and worked with the soybean industry. Soybean industry needed a high oleic content in soybeans. We made populations of mutant. and we screen them with forward and reverse genetics. I can explain this a little further later.
So, well, no, yeah, but I mean, this is a good jumping off point there. Like, first off, you're already working towards that. Like, you haven't just come in as a student and sought, that activity, but you've come in, in private business and said, how do I, as somebody who has been through, all of the different rungs of academia, engage the system with private business?
Absolutely. And it's key. It's really key because what universities cannot do or what universities cannot afford, private companies can through their networks. Let's say we want to set up a growing facility to teach, for example, students. Just the lighting, all the material, all the equipment that we need, we can get that for free just from our partners. Please take this and try it. This is what people are doing.
Yeah.
They will flood you with lighting and racks and media to grow. Just please try it and give us data so we can use. We can find equipment. We can help in so many ways. We just need that understanding from the university that we as private companies, we want to make money, but we want to give back to these communities. Otherwise, we'll be somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you come here and you see the potential, but you want to make this better and you have the means for it, I think if you don't do it, that's on you. And if someone is bringing you the resources, the knowledge, the love, brother, and the respect, like my relationship with SIU is just beyond just a partnership. I came here, this community welcomed me. I published at least 10 or 11 manuscripts and a book chapter with SIU. SIU, they wrote about me and the research that I've been doing and everything. So I feel like literally that it's my duty to give back. And that's what I told the lab where I work. I told them GrowMix is a platform for you guys if you want to do any epigenetic work on soybean.
Yeah.
And today we are a two joint venture. We submitted 2 grants, one for the Department of Energy to use hemp as a commodity to clean up mine land around this area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have one for soybean to deal with soybean cyst nematode. It costs around $40 billion a year for the soybean industry, the losses, because this nematode can just destroy your entire field. And you don't see it because it happens in the root.
Yeah.
So before you know it, your entire field is gone. We're trying to apply the technologies from GrowMix to tackle these problems because SIU doesn't have the knowledge or the resources for it. So I'm providing the kits, the platform, the equipment, and SIU is providing the genetic material, and we're going to get all together, do a research, publish manuscript together so we can continue building on that very initial relationship that I built with SIU.
The ideal public-private partnership type of opportunity.
Absolutely. Like my goal is, it's mutual. Look, here's the thing. When I have in my back a university such as SIU, when I go negotiate a deal with someone, I have a backup. I know that I have something solid that is helping me.
Yeah.
But in the same time, that deal that I'm negotiating, I am bringing it to the university. I'm making it, like, to break it down, I'm making a sandwich.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing the sandwich to SIU, and we're like, hey, I'll take half, and you take half.
Yeah.
Private-public partnership is the key for SIU to get back to when we had 30,000 students.
And at scale, right, you're talking about a very particular thing, because it's not about going out and engaging a large organization that already exists, right? There is plenty of that goes on throughout higher education, right? I can think of a recent set of reporting that has started to come out through Illinois Public Radio and their investigation into large ag firms contributing to ag programs and so on and so forth, and what that influence looks like. We're talking about creating businesses out of here and not going in and finding something that's already an established institutional business player, but starting to develop the businesses from square one here and finding a way to just in 30, 50, however many years have that collection of businesses that started here, like a Google that started out of a basement in where
I mean, not only Google, like look at Amazon.
Yeah.
Look at it's like Apple. And we don't have garages here. We have look at this facility. Like your facility is like
we have
amazing.
way more than
I walked
garages.
in and I'm like, yeah, we can do a lot of things here. It's pretty and you have equipment and it's nice and it's the beginning, but it's already looking marvelous.
Yeah.
And this incubator, let's just talk about this incubator for
Yeah.
a second. This is supposed to be an innovation center where I would love to work here one day and see this place just like popping with kids, white coats,
Yeah.
labs, like R&D. There is some really interesting kids that are doing VR right now. They have an academy.
Yeah.
I was like, when I saw them the first time, I'm like, I thought I was cool with my research, but these guys are like amazing.
Yeah.
We should have more. It's an innovation center. We should have businesses related to innovation.
Yeah.
Open this. Look, there is clusters everywhere in the United States. For me, as a startup company, I could have went to St. Louis. They will write me a $50,000 check, so I can have my startup company in one of those clusters, accelerated.
I got an ad on Facebook several weeks ago that was for a similar type of rural setting in, I want to say Idaho, that was like, we have a business incubator, we have a university, we have this small town with all this, and it was just like, why can't we present ourselves like that?
I don't know why we don't. I don't know why we don't. Like honestly, it's like you have channels here and radios. Like, why? Why not? You have a platform right here within the incubator.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what you should do? You should get every single one of these little innovators here and put them in this chair.
Oh, absolutely.
And let them talk about their experiences. Maybe this way, and using the hashtags and all these TikToks and Instagram. That's the real platform. Like literally, today, if you are in the cannabis industry and you're blocked everywhere, go to LinkedIn.
Oh, absolutely. And people, that's what's crazy to me, right? Is that like of all places that became the social platform for cannabis, it's LinkedIn.
It's free. And if you want to push it a notch, you can pay $29.99 a month,
Yeah.
and you have access to everything you want.
Yeah.
Like literally job offers, like all kind of meetings that they post, everything in there. And it's a really good platform, and I use it every day. I use it literally every day. All my contact, all this network that I've been building for the past 2-3 years around cannabis was mainly because of LinkedIn. And then I flew to Vegas and West Coast to those conferences.
Yeah.
And then I met those people.
Well, and you have real conversation. I love watching you interact on LinkedIn, because when you pop up, like, you're asking questions of people. You're making people like validate a statement that they might make. You're asking questions to further your own knowledge. You are engaging in the community as a whole, as like a professional individual and a person who is what's the word that I'm looking for here? Just somebody who is of knowledgeable rapport in this space.
I love LinkedIn. Why? Because there's a lot of good things, and there's the hype as well. And the hype in the cannabis industry is hilarious. Like, you have these people, like, I'll take an example. The last, someone did a study on CBD and CBG.
And its effects on
COVID. On COVID and everything. And the hype was like, we
you
smokers
smoke
were getting
weed,
everything.
yeah.
I'm like, whoa, slow down. When you smoke, you don't get any of those compounds.
Yeah.
Okay? When you smoke THCA, when you smoke it, all you get is CBN.
Uh-huh.
Right? You're taking an edible, there's a different voie of processing of that. You never get that. You never get that CBG or like, you don't. And on top of that, it was done in a petri dish. It was an isolated molecule that they did something on a petri dish on a cell. In vivo is completely different.
Uh-huh.
So this is the kind of hype that is misleading.
Yeah.
And people out there are just like, I don't want to even get into the genetics part of cannabis, because the hype that I see out there, I'm like, you guys are growing the same thing.
Yeah.
When you go do a COVID test and they're like, oh, you need a PCR test, so we're like, accurate. Let me show you what a PCR.
There we go. There we go. This man's got transitions. This man's got transitions right here.
Like, if I'm gonna compete with Kyle Baker bringing
A robot.
I'm gonna bring a PCR. All right. This
Here,
is
let me make sure that the camera's
Yeah.
so you can see yourself.
This is a thermocycler. This is literally a PCR machine. So when you go and they do all the swab on your nose and they put it in a little tube and it looks all scientific, they take that just to extract genetic material out of it. So they extract that genetic material and they put it in this machine. This PCR is just to amplify an input of DNA in here. So they put that sample in here. It will take that copy of whatever virus you have, multiply it, and then give them the results. And they're like, oh, you have the virus because we could amplify fragments of it using this machine. So this is like part of the thing that we do with cannabis. For example, someone stole your genetics. You know, someone was like, no, this variety is mine.
Yeah.
Do you have a fingerprint for that genetic that you claim? No, I don't. So what's your proof? You need proof that if you're saying that those genetics are mine, I need a fingerprint. I need people to start genotyping their plants.
Yeah.
Here is the thing. This is something very important that we're talking about it. You know a blueprint for a house?
Yeah.
There is the same thing for genetics. It's a polymorphism in that DNA. It's a piece of that DNA. Its DNA is like A, T, C, and G. So you have a signature that is specific to those genetics. That's a polymorphism that is specific to those genetics. If you sequence and you genotype them, one day someone comes telling you that those genetics belongs to them, or a big company with the federal legalization come to you and try to steal your genetics, you can tell them, I have an ID for my genetics. So if you want this, you're gonna have to pay for it. This is the only way we can protect those farmers or those legacy growers up in Humboldt County and have a fingerprint of your genetics so you can protect yourself from big companies as soon as we have federal legalization in this country.
Is that what's coming down the pipeline in terms of like people copywriting, trademarking, using, like, setting things into intellectual property? If you want to set that back to where it was, I can reset the camera. We're good. But like that's what's coming down the pipeline when there's talk to the microphone. That's what's coming down the pipeline when there is the ability to work within the typical structure of intellectual property rights as set forth by the federal government. Like when that goes down, it's going to be a mad dash for people to own the genetics and have a way to say that they own those genetics.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you what happened. What's going to happen is there is no banking act so far, so big companies are just standing by. They're just sitting there and watching. You know, the lioness is hunting. The hyenas are sitting right there and watching. They want to steal. Or a cheetah. Let's just talk about a cheetah because a lioness is a little stronger. So a cheetah will go and put the entire effort. Cheetah got 30 seconds. If he doesn't catch anything in 30 seconds, you need to stop or the heart gonna explode. So when cheetahs, they catch something, they don't eat it. They have to wait for their body to go back to that temperature and a normal metabolism to start eating. That's when hyenas attack. Upon federal legalization, all of these big companies, they're gonna need access to genetics. Where do you think they're gonna go? MSOs are really big for them. Maybe Marlboro will come in and be like, okay, I don't know, any of these big MSOs here, they can swallow them. But the real genetics are not with those big companies. Because if you look at an eighth sold by an MSO and a legacy grower, you throw the other 8 in the trash, dude. So they're gonna go for those genetics that are sitting in freezers up in the mountains. Those people, if they have a fingerprint for every single one of those genetics, it will give them leverage to negotiate with those big companies. I have this genetics, this plant right here. It will give you this much CBD, this much THC, all of these terpene, all these profiles. And on top of that, I have the genetic fingerprint that gives you that set us apart from the rest of the genetics. And that's what big companies are interested in, because it's IP. That's something that they can own and they can charge people for it. And I did that with SIU, working on a soybean germplasm. We used to make populations of mutant, and we sell them to Bayer and BASF and Monsanto for a lot of money. It's all about intellectual property. And the only way you can protect yourself is through genetic testing. But what happened is, I'm not going to say the name, but one of these companies went there and asked people to genotype their genetics and everything, but they stole genetics from them. And that's the problem now, because there is a gap that is, we need to heal first, and then rebuild the relationship of trust between scientists and those growers, so we can protect them from what's coming. And this is coming from a genuine person. I flew there. I flew to LA, and I took a Greyhound bus to Fresno, California.
So here's a question for you that gets us a little out of the science talk, but like, when it comes to traveling, right? Like, what are the experiences that you have had that just makes it easy to go wherever you need to go, and like, how much does that allow you to pursue the endeavors that you want to pursue, right? Because like, some people would look at it and go, oh, well, I'm not going to fly to wherever and get on a Greyhound bus and ride up into the middle of the mountains of nowhere and blah, blah, blah. They'd be like, that's not for me. They're like, I'd rather, sit in an office and make phone calls. If it doesn't go through, it doesn't go through. Right? Like, is that an edge that you feel like you've got? Dude, because you're like, I can go anywhere. I can talk to anybody. If there is a road that leads there, or a boat that I can go down the river on, like, I will find a way to get to where I need to go.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
Going through the hustle of going from here to St. Louis, flying to LA, and the ride on board of that bus was hilarious, because I felt like I was somewhere else. I wasn't in America. A wonderful Mexican community in that bus going to the valley. That's where they work. And it was amazing. I'm a traveler, dude. I lived around the planet. I lived in over 10 countries. And it's what makes the character, what gives you that ability to walk into a room, start talking without no. It's get exposed to different people, different cultures and customs and languages and religions, so you can build that character. So a person in front of you is not a problem anymore. Yeah. But to go back to that, the traveling and everything, I did all of that. And it was very, very bad conditions, like traveling. It was cold, it was raining, and the roads were insane. You're in a Greyhound. I get there and I meet those people. We're in trucks and we're going into these big farms and stuff. And it was amazing. And when you sit there and you start talking about science, silence in those greenhouses. It's like everybody is listening. And I love it, because people are like, maybe this guy is saying something cool. If he accepted to pay for his travel, to come here just to say that and help us with our problems, we should give him a shot. And we spent 3 days, wonderful 3 days with those farmers. I had some friend of mine, they came from Humboldt County, from Salmon Creek, bringing some genetics, and we sat there and we talked and worked all these projects. I love it. And I would love to have something like here in Illinois, where I can go and just meet with farmers like growing hemp or whatever content of THC is in there. Like, we need to stop. There is one plant, Cannabis sativa, and we need to just accept it.
So that's a good question for folks. Like, where are we at now as like our relationship to cannabis societally, right? Where we say, oh, there's so much different cannabis, this, that, the other, but you're coming in saying, no, from a scientific standpoint, there is a plant and this is it.
Okay, I'm going to give you this. There is different content of sugar in soybean or in corn. Mm-hmm. Why we don't? They're crops. Why they're not regulated? Look, you can make moonshine out of corn, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we don't regulate corn. I don't care what you do with it. So cannabis is a plant that can give you a seed for oil extract, can give you a flower with cannabinoids, it's medicine, and it's also to get high. It can give you fiber, can give you hurt, can give you a lot of things. So why are we going to take a fraction, which is nothing but a secondary metabolite? It's not even a primary metabolite in cannabis. Cannabinoids are secondary metabolites. They're used to react to the environment. All those cannabinoids you see in those trichomes, that's a reaction to the plant towards the environment.
Yeah.
Why are we going to take a tiny little compound in an entire plant and demonize it? Doesn't make any sense. So just treat it like a crop. We humans, we have a weird psychology. We tend to go towards the prohibited, you know what I'm saying? Anything that is
the taboo.
Yes. We are very curious. If you take this and make it just treat it as another crop. All of this hype and this interest and this weird things going on, they're just going to collapse. Because the only thing that is pushing people towards this is because you cannot get it. Human psychology is weird, man. You tell them that, you tell them that you cannot drink in the streets. People still drink in the streets because they want to defy the system. They want to push the limits. But if you tell them, yeah, it's okay, they're gonna abuse it for a second, but then it's gonna become just a normal thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just take it out of the closet. Take it out of the closet. If anybody is listening to this or watching this, just read about the plant. People just need to read about that plant. Who came up with the 0.3? Why do you think that 0.3 THC content is okay and 0.4 is not, or 1% is not? Just make that compliance very tough on people so they cannot make it, because they know to achieve 0.3 THC percent in a CBD dominant variety, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And just the environment will mess with your genetics and make them test hot for THC. And then you have to destroy your crop. Why would you do that? If the idea of legalizing this is to build wealth and equity in little communities and social equity programs and all of the, here again, it's the hype, using the flag to slide a lot of things. Why are we doing this if we're not actually serving the little community? Oh, the farmer here in Southern Illinois would love to have the opportunity to grow hemp as a cash crop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? People can work their entire breeding programs and just select from their own plants and just be sustainable and produce something that has value. A bushel of corn, what is it, $50?
I couldn't tell you.
Look at a pound of smokable hemp flour. On top of that, I didn't want to talk about it, but carbon sequestration is my thing. I don't even care about cannabinoids, but it's just the industry is so focused on these things.
You take your in that you can get. But
absolutely. I can do it, why not? If I can help, why not? But carbon sequestration, we can take an acre of 25 years old cedar trees and an acre of hemp. The amount of carbon the carbon from the atmosphere that's going to be fixed by that biomass in hemp, fourfold.
In a year's time versus 25 years' time.
Yeah, because I can do 2 cycles of hemp. I can do an autoflower and do 2 cycles. Autoflowers don't care about sunlight. They're pulling all of that carbon out of the atmosphere, putting it in the biomass through the roots, and you're turning the soil into a carbon sink because you're pushing all of that carbon to the soil. All this area is full of strip pits from mines, right?
Yeah.
If we can turn those big holes into carbon sinks, sequester that carbon, work that soil, make it really good, phytoremediate that soil. We know that hemp is a phytoremediator. It will suck all the heavy metals out of the soil. So not only we are taking the carbon from the atmosphere, putting it as organic matter in the soil, but we're taking heavy metals out of that soil and putting it in the biomass. That biomass can go get decorticated into herd, and we can build houses with it.
So
not only you are trapping the heavy metals in hempcrete, you are building something that could be zero emission. It's literally a piece of carbon. The atmosphere carbon dioxide is trapped into a brick in your house. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if we're not trying to help the planet, cleaning it from within, if you're gonna rely on Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to find another planet, well, they're gonna go there and you're gonna stay here. That's what I'm gonna say.
I hadn't, we hadn't talked in depth about, how that carbon sequestration and how the absorption of heavy metals into the biomass kind of works. So I had never like dug that deep with you or Kyle or anybody yet, but to think that it's like literally that simple, that carbon gets locked from the plant back into the soil where it belongs, where it came from to begin with, right? Oil, coal, everything was
Absolutely.
exists because it was carbon at one point.
Yeah, organic matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you see those like really thick branches, that's all carbon. Mm-hmm. That carbon was trapped by the photosynthetic system. So basically the plant to grow needs light and carbon dioxide. Mm-hmm. So they go hand in hand. Absorb light through chlorophyll, get your carbon, make ATP, that's energy for the plant. Mm-hmm. And you see it in biomass. Those gorgeous green plants, that's carbon. Literally, that's your atmospheric carbon dioxide in there.
So let's say that a plot of hemp gets planted over mined reclamation land, and the hemp absorbs the heavy metals out of the ground, but it doesn't get turned into an industrial use like a hempcrete or something like that. If you shred that biomass and you just throw it back into, or onto the land, what does that in turn do? What has happened in that sense?
Well, let's say you took all the heavy metal, but you put it back in not all of it, but some of it got used, but you still have residual.
Yeah.
They're gonna go back to the soil, but still, your gain is that biomass is gonna sit on that land and get decomposed into organic matter that will help that soil. So if we can do this in phases, either we'll go in and put some organic matter in that soil first, and then by the time we find a way to process that biomass, we'll take the heavy metals. Or if the university is willing to do some R&D in here, how can we build a processing facility around here with private partners here again? I know you go to the university and I'm like, oh, we need $20 million to build a facility. They're like, oh, well, we can't do that. But if I bring 2-3 companies willing to invest in this area with a partnership with SIU, then it's not going to become a problem. And now we have a processing facility here for that biomass we just made out of dirty soils.
Yeah.
Kyle Baker will talk about this. The soybean industry in, what is that town here with the Centralia. So someone came to Centralia and said, I'm going to build a soybean threshing processing facility. Would you grow soybean for me? I'll buy it from you. And that's what makes Centralia the world capital of soybeans today.
No, and I know.
Come on.
He's told me the story of the gentleman that did all of this, and he was like, "That's my blueprint." He's like, "That's what he is building his companies off of." Come on now, Nathan. My apologies. But like that's, it's to do what needs to be done right now in this area is not something new in terms of how to execute, right? There is a blueprint that exists for this.
Absolutely.
We just got to do it.
Look, someone already, like, if you drive around this area, you're gonna see feral hemp growing on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
If you go past Nashville, and don't take that left to go to St. Louis, just keep going, you're gonna see some feral hemp there. So there is a history of hemp in this area.
Yeah.
So what happened is back in the Prohibition,
Mm-hmm.
the lumber industry decided that, well, we cleared up a lot of land for Americans, and now the hemp and the fiber people are taking the market away from us. What's going on in America? They had money and lobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
They shut down the entire hemp industry. Well, we need to bring it back because now lumber is very expensive.
Yeah.
So alternative. I'm like, I don't know what else we can say about this. Like,
I mean,
it's just calling our names from every corner,
Yeah.
from every aspect of our daily life. I'm gonna give you an example. You know, when you go to these beautiful staples and they have horses, that animal bedding. What do they use?
Wood chips.
Wood chips. They get wet really quick.
Yeah.
Horrible isolation. The smell. I don't want to talk about it. They're using hemp bedding in Oklahoma for like just big ranches, like cattle everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
This is how like the byproducts of that plant, we can use them everywhere. We can use them everywhere. Like, come on, it's plastic. Did you see the hemp bioplastic?
Oh yeah, that can degrade in 2 months as opposed to 2,000 years.
Cannabis companies should think about their packaging. All of that glass and wood.
Mm-hmm.
How about hemp? Something that if I throw in the trash, I know that's gonna get decomposed really quick.
Yeah.
Instead of having a whole cabinet full of those little jars and how are you gonna get rid of that? Plastic and glass and hemp, hemp containers. They're pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I have a grinder. It's made out of hemp. If you
Wow.
look at it, it's like, this is plastic. No, it's hemp. You know what? Quality of grinding, way better than plastic or steel.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't hear that. It's amazing. Like, I keep like just finding these hemp products, and they are amazing. It's like, why not? Did you try the milk?
Have I tried what?
Hemp milk.
No, I've not.
It's like if you try almond, if you try, I don't know, all kind of milk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little weird. You can taste the plant, but when you look at all the composition in there, man, it's like really good fatty acid, especially vitamin 3 and vitamin 9, oleic acid and linoleic acid, and it's low in omega 6, which is a pro-inflammatory, which is soybean. Soybean oil. Well, soybean oil is very important for American people because that's the major source of vitamin E.
Mm-hmm.
You see tocopherol, which means vitamin E. Hemp could be an alternative, man. The profile, the fatty acid content, the polyphenol and other secondary metabolites in hemp oil, it's wonderful. And people are starting using it everywhere. You go to Whole Foods now.
Well, I mean, what was it that I saw? That Pepsi's coming out with like a hemp cola. That
I'm not surprised. Nike is coming with the 77 model, a
Really?
hemp one. I saw it. I'm like, I texted my wife. I sent her a screenshot. I'm like, well, I want this. She's like, that's something pretty cool. If these big brands are showing the use of hemp,
yeah.
that's the trend. It's a big company. They have millions of followers. Nike puts a hemp pair of Air Forces out in the market. First day, they're gonna be sold out everywhere just because hemp is cool and Nike is doing it and LeBron James is wearing it.
Yeah.
Or Kevin Durant or All it takes
Somebody.
is one start.
Yeah.
One star.
And then it's there.
And it's like one post on Instagram or LinkedIn, and those stars, they have millions of followers, dude. And people just gotta start order it.
Yep. And now hemp is commonplace again all of a sudden.
Dude, it's durable. It's a durable fabric, and you can make, like, I see people processing hemp plants to like different textures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's laminate floors and like it's
Yeah.
not, you know,
the
there's
vinyls,
there's
roll out stuff. Yeah.
The ones made out of hemp, it depend of the size of the herb. You have a different pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. It looks like you pour like epoxy on top of it. It's like slick and shiny and good looking, and it's durable. You know. Instead, laminate floor or whatever, water on it, or you have a pet.
Let it
Every
ride.
year you gotta change it.
So you here, getting away from business talk and shop talk on cannabis for a moment, doing some of the personal insight that comes along with these podcasts. How did you and your wife meet? That's
Dude,
that's
a funny one. That's a funny one because you're like, well, if Nathan asks you about how we met, just don't say anything crazy.
Ah!
I was like, you know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say details. Like we're here. The purpose of this podcast is to open up.
Yeah, you got it.
Just like open up to that level where it becomes intimate, because this area, I think that's the way we should go. We should get close to each other, especially when you look like that and I look like this. Like
Yeah.
people are like, what are you guys doing together? It's really weird. But to go back to we met at Pinch. Pinch Penny.
R.I.P.
It's like Pinch Penny is a landmark, and I'm so sad that we just lost that.
Yeah.
That's a piece of Carbondale, dude. Like
Yeah.
when I came to Carbondale in 2015, I just say this to like make myself feel better. I think that was the last golden age of Carbondale, 2015. When you see people in the street having fun, and school, the campus is full of people, and you know, and after 2015, it just like it went down really quick. It was coming like
Yeah.
the curve, but it was just like going down.
Really.
So we
took
met
flight.
at Pinch. The beer garden was open.
Yeah.
I'm there with a friend of mine from Seychelles. He was here on an aviation program, and we speak French. We speak French in Morocco. He's from Seychelles. They speak French, so we're sitting there and just talking. And then Brianna, she's standing right there with her friend. It was her friend's birthday, and she was standing there, and she heard French, and she turned around and she said something. And you know how it works.
Yeah.
Oh, where and when did you learn French? And one thing's after another, and we just started talking. And
So does she speak French as well?
yes, she took that in high school,
school,
but
yeah.
her French is pretty good for someone who lives in here.
Yeah, yeah. For
It's
someone who
like-
lives in Southern
it's like,
Illinois.
you speak French here? That's weird. But and it's like even at home, sometimes I'll just say something in French and she will catch it, you know. And that's where we met, Pinch, man. And just from there, she was a genuine person, you know.
Yeah.
When you come here and you don't know anybody, the first person that you meet, usually it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get screwed the first time you meet someone because like you come from the other side of the planet, and people, they like, oh, I don't know. And my name is Oussama, dude. Like, just, come on, let's just talk about it for a second. And yeah, we just started talking, and she drove me everywhere. I don't drive. I've never been behind a wheel in my life.
Really?
So my carbon like imprint,
like at that time or even now, you still don't drive?
never in my life. Like till today, I don't drive.
Wow.
I wish they had more sidewalks in this town.
Yeah.
So I walk everywhere, unless it's really far, and then I'll take an Uber, or
Yeah.
she will take me. So we had these Sunday afternoon drives, where she will pick me up, and we'll go on a little drive around Southern Illinois, wineries, just all these little back roads. She was a photographer for Teacher of Nature, and she was all over the place.
Uh-huh.
So we go, we get stoned, and we enjoy the parks here. We hike, and that relationship built up really quick. And 2015, I went back home. I came back. We got married 2017, May 1st.
Wow.
he got married, and we've been married for what? It's gonna be 5 years now, soon.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Pinch was a really good place. They're like, whoever bought it or closed it, please just open that place. Open it back. Open it back. I don't know what happened there, man. It's sad. And this is just like when you have landmarks like this just falling.
Yeah.
Just like the empire is like falling apart. Like, what's going on? And towns and big cities, when they fall down, there's always a man to build them back up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about New York City, San Francisco. It's like in the middle of, like back in the time where people didn't have resources. Look what happened in San Francisco, burned down, and someone went out lending people, and years later, it's the Bank of America.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and it comes down to, there being, when there is a void, right, there is always an opportunity, right? Yeah. Like, and that's why I see, the cannabis industry and its wide depth of applications that you've described
briefly. Like I was
this is Cliff Notes.
Yeah, it's like exactly Cliff Notes. Yeah, really quick.
But like the reality is, right, that if there was a lot of activity in a different industry, if there was a lot of just general financial stability throughout the region, if there were not issues with population decline and access to resources and so on and so forth, that nobody would be looking for another opportunity in this place right now, right? But because there is a void of activity, there is a void of opportunity, right? That it makes it easier to go out to the general public over the course of time, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it makes it easier to introduce a new, we say new, but really hemp is old. Old is, civilization itself. But introducing it in a new way to say, hey, this thing that you've missed out on for this long, like maybe it's time to give it a shot.
Absolutely. And I'm like, I was talking to Kyle, like, what do we have to do to get people on board? Do we have to just the two of us walk in the strip with like big signs, let's go grow hemp everywhere here, or like something like that? We need to have a serious, honest conversation with the university, the city council, the decision makers around here, businessmen, people. A lot of people, I get phone calls and emails like, hey, we're from the area, we have interest in medical marijuana, this and that, but I need you to show up. I need you to not just let's just talk behind veils and curtains. Like let's bring this to the city.
It needs to be a public conversation.
Absolutely. Have once a month, private companies, university, media, business people, businessmen and women in this industry, or not in the industry, to get together and meet in the city council or whatever building where we can sit and talk. And just talk about it.
Yeah.
Just really talk about it. I get this. We can take this example really quick. The enrollment rate at SIU.
Mm-hmm.
It's very concerning.
Yeah.
If you look at other universities that adopted only a 6 to 8 months license, cannabis license, the enrollment rates and retention rates. So you're not only bringing new people, but your people are getting interested in those subjects
and building the industry.
And exactly, instead of losing your students to another university here in Illinois because they have a license program, keep them here and bring people here, because we are in the best place for this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is an agricultural area. And whatever we apply to corn and soybean and cotton, all these years, we can build an industry around hemp. Absolutely, yes. But here again, who is going to play the role to aggregate all of these components?
Mm-hmm.
And if we rely on other people to do it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
This is, these kind of emerging markets, the effort starts here. But they need to reach the top really quick to make them make the decisions for the flow to go.
Because if it moves too slow, that somewhere in the middle between the start and the peak
is going to get killed somewhere.
So some other interest is going to come in and
Absolutely.
take it out from underneath us.
And just like, why not? It's legal here. We have a 2018 Farm Bill for that 0.3, and it's legal in the state of Illinois for recreational purposes. Why not make this as a hub for genetic distribution? For example, if you are a company here in Illinois and you want to acquire genetics, you cannot have them from California. That's against the law. As soon as you cross state, I think it's a felony.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. So the illicit market is insane. How all these people here getting their genetics from? That's a different question. Why not make genetics here with the university made in Illinois for the people of Illinois?
Yeah.
Just like a campaign, just like this. Made here for the people of Illinois.
Yeah.
Just if, let's say, we're going to start growing outside. Conditions here in Southern Illinois are pretty tough. Flowering season, humidity and heat here is insane. We need to have acclimation for those genetics to be able to go through flowering in the conditions that we have here. Humidity, heavy clay soil, all of that. It's like people don't care about this because it's not an issue yet. It's not a bottleneck yet. What I'm saying here is go ahead of the market. Give yourself the chance to be 2-3 years ahead of the market. That's why we're doing epigenetics at Gromix. Nobody's looking at epigenetics right now. Everybody is happy with genes and genomes.
Yeah.
And
So what is the difference in what you're doing, in what you do with plants versus what the common discussion around things like genetically modified organisms and stuff is? Right, because you're in a completely different world. I mean, I don't let me say completely
I'll
different
break
world,
it
but
down. I like to use the Russian dolls
Uh-huh.
to explain this. So, to a plant, you have different layers. You have the phenotype is what you see, or even for a human, the phenotype is the color of the skin, the eyes, whatever. For a plant is what you actually see. There is a genotype, which is the genetic material, the DNA that its expression gives you that phenotype. That's another layer in the Russian doll. You know, you open this one, you find another one, you open that one, you find another one. So what I do is I understand the mechanism that controls that genotype that interact with the environment to give you that phenotype. So I'm like a layer deeper than everybody else. Let's say we know that THCA, synthase that makes THC, is governed by copy number variation, which means copy number, it's how many copies of that gene you have in there that it's making THC. If you have one copy, you have like 1%. If you have, 5 copies, you have 25%. That's how it works. So what I do is I want to understand beyond the number of the copies, what else controls the gene expression of that gene. So just look at it from Russian dolls, one inside of one, and the layer that I'm working on is that deepest little one that you cannot open because there is nothing after that. That's why I want to go ahead of the market in cannabis 2-3 years, because it's not going to be like soybean or corn. The last 10 years, the biotechnology, the sequencing, all of that technology just went really fast.
Yeah.
I want to take advantage of that and start applying the cutting edge technology that is still being developed to cannabis. So when all of these people are done working on their genes and mapping genes and stuff, and they cannot explain what's going on with what they have, they're going to need another layer. And that's going to be me sitting right there. So that's what I want. I want to be ahead of the market 2 to 3 years.
That's it.
It's easy and simple. You are looking at locks. I'm looking at different combinations.
Yeah.
The easiest way to explain it. You want to put a little bit of science is you have a gene right here. The genome is made out of genes. There's a lot of genes and a lot of space between those genes that we think they don't do anything. But there's a lot of regulations of those genes in that area. So you have a gene right here. I don't care about what's going on in this gene. I care about its promoter, which is the region upstream of that gene. They got a lot of mechanisms that control the expression of this one. That's exactly what I work on, promoter regions. Transcription factors. Sometimes for this gene to work, you need a transcription factor to bind to the promoter to initiate the transcription. I do DNA protein interactions. That's a transcription factor. You want to look at DNA methylation. DNA methylation is, to explain it simple, you have a carbon molecule.
Osama would be wrong. I don't think there's anything simple.
Just like
I appreciate the candor in being able to explain things simply, but I mean, what you do is high-end shit.
it's not high-end shit. It's just, do you see the interest of it or not? In everything you do in life. Do you have a purpose? Why are you doing that job? If you know why, it doesn't matter. If it was made by a human, it's not science fiction. It's a protocol, especially in what we do. Like it's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. But the thing that leads to that step 1, step 2, step 3, a lot of R&D optimization and a lot of work behind. But it's nothing phenomenal. Like, oh, you work on DNA. Sometimes, like, do you want to look at a picture of DNA? And people, they think that I'm going to show them something weird.
And it's just work.
It's an electrophoresis gel. We take that DNA, we stain it, and we put it in an agar gel, and we put electricity. And the DNA pieces will move by size. So if you're small, you're going to migrate further. And then it's like, whatever. It's like, it just... And you can see it. It's just... And we look at it with all kind of different inflorescence, ultraviolet and all that, and you can actually look at it. You can see it. And it's just one band. It's just a little band, and it's like, is that DNA? I'm like, yeah. All of you, I can reduce you to one small Eppendorf tube. You will be like 20 microliter. Like, literally, people, they like, is that what? I'm like, I can put you in 20 microliter of DNA. It's like, you can't even see it. It's like, right? And it's possible. It's not magical, dude.
Yeah.
It's really easy and simple. That machine we showed earlier, that PCR, it will allow us, that's why we amplify the copies, because what we extract from the plant is really tiny and it's small quantities. We need to amplify it so we can study it. So it looks like it's really crazy, but it's simple. But it's a lot of like hardcore science. Like that machine, it got biological component, and then you have other like people working on physics and mathematics, electronics. A lot of people got together to make that machine, but doesn't make that machine something extraordinary. But people, they filled the need for it, and they built it. Simple. And why I see the need of epigenetics to explain. You know what all this came from? Last year in July, I published a manuscript about the epigenetic imprint, specifically DNA methylation, in the story of domestication of olive trees. So I wanted to know in 5,000 years.
I'm so glad that you got to the olive tree part, because I didn't want to leave the podcast without the olives.
No,
sorry,
because I'll tell you a story about the olives. Like, you know what? Let's start from scratch. From the beginning. I was like, let's start from the beginning. My story with olives. I grew up with my dad growing olives. We have a beautiful olive grove back home. My dad is a farmer. He's an agriculture engineer, but we bought a piece of land that has a lot of rocks, and it was trash. It wasn't fit for agriculture. We dug those rocks out of that piece. We didn't have any resources to get a bobcat and push that around.
Yeah.
No, it was like labor, hard work. We cleaned that area. We started our olive grove. 20 years later, I'm part of the team that we published the first olive genome in the world. I literally have Marc Van Montagu with me as a co-author. The guy was gonna be nominated for Nobel Prize. Like if you put Marc Van Montagu, he's from Belgium, the Catholic University of Ghent, and this guy is the father of plant biotechnology. And then that was in 2017. We published that. 4 years later, I published the first epigenome, which is we looked at 5,000 years of domestication. What happened to those epigenetic marks? We found out that because humans like olive oil that is fruity and sweet, we selected towards that kind of oil, which led to the loss of epigenetic marks. How are we going to make it really simple? You know when you try some olive oils that they're like bitter, and people are like, oh, this is horrible. That's the olive oil you want. Why? Because that's the concentration of polyphenols that would give that olive oil that pungency and that bitterness. And that's the medicine in olive oil. But humans didn't like it. So for 5,000 years, they were only selecting genotypes with fruity olive oil. So Italy, Turkey, France, Portugal, Spain, all of that olive oil you get from there, bro. Don't even take it. Don't even buy it. There was a guy from California, Dr. Gundry. He went to Morocco, to the south of Morocco. He found this guy who produces this horrible olive oil, really bitter. He made a contract with him to buy all of his olive oil. You know how much he's selling it today? You had a $45 for 350 milliliter. He bought it probably for $5 a liter. So basically, I'm telling the industry, we need to go back the opposite way. But they will be pissed because that olive oil that is bitter only comes from wild olives. You cannot tell people that spend millions and trillions and billions of whatever dollars in the breeding programs in olives to tell them, whoa, let's go back to 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's go back to the origin of. Well, I mean, it's like Brussels sprouts, right? Brussels sprouts is a very modern example of like what's happened in just the past 20 years.
Yeah.
That they have that Brussels sprouts on a table 30, 40 years ago were large and bitter and not of regular consumption for folks because they just weren't. Now, just in the past 20, 30 years, the selective breeding has got us to a point where they are just running smaller, leafier Brussels sprouts that taste sweet and
meaty. Like it's selection. It's crazy. Tomatoes, beans. Like the most beautiful example for breeding for beans, the genetic diversity is insane, man. It's unbelievable. But just to talk why epigenetics. So when I did that study, I analyzed the data, and I worked with SIU on this project too. And we were like, if this is what happened in olives during 5,000 years, let's see what's going on in cannabis, because cannabis is very old, and cannabis came from the Tibetan Plateau in Asia. The story that's been told, and I'm very mad about it because they did something very interesting. They wanted to follow the Silk Road and the tea and whatever. So to come to this part of the planet from Asia a long time ago, you had to walk. So from the Tibetan Plateau, that's where all the tea and all the roads are, So if you follow that and you go west, you're gonna come from there through all these Eastern European countries, or way before you get there. Just like to come there from like Russia and to get to the Mediterranean, where all the trade was. Like the Mediterranean was a road for trade. So when they got there, they skipped the whole African continent. They didn't take any samples from Africa. They took samples from Europe and from America, but not from Africa. So they told the story that cannabis started there, and it moved through the Silk Road, through Turkey, up north to Greece, and all these countries all the way to Southern Europe, which is Spain and all of that. And then in America. studies prove that the first use of cannabis in Americas came after the 1400s. That's exactly when slave trade started between Africa and America. So if you forgot about that entire piece of land, you are telling the story wrong, because how did genetics get to America? It wasn't through the Silk Road. It was through the slave trading. So those strains came strictly from Morocco, because all the trade started in Morocco. The first slave in America in the 1500s, he was from Morocco. He was brought here with the American conquistador. If you read the story, 1536, I would say, just read the story about this guy from Morocco. It's hilarious. So I want to rewrite the story. My dear friend, he lives in Australia, and he works in the same thing. Evolution, genomics. He works on ancient DNA. He works in Adelaide in the Australian Ancient DNA Center. And we had this project. We want to rewrite the history of cannabis. We're going to do exactly what they did, and we're going to use their data as third party, and we're going to take our data from Moroccan genetics and try to rewrite the history.
Because you can prove.
Of course I can
with
prove
the genetics
the
of
imprint
it.
is in DNA. The imprint is in the DNA. And if you say that we started growing cannabis in Morocco 700 to 900 years ago, come on. There is something going on there.
Yeah.
Like, literally, a few months ago, they discovered a new terpene in cannabis. You know what they call it? Hashishin. It comes from the drying and the curing process in Morocco. Instead of dark, they dry the cannabis on the roofs of the houses. We have rooftops in Morocco. You guys, you don't know anything about rooftop unless it's a bar. But in Morocco, we have rooftops. That's when we dry our clothes and stuff when we wash them. So the plants are dried under the sunlight. So what happened is the myrcene gets messed with the ultraviolet and gets switched into a new terpene called the hashishin, published. So the knowledge in there is as ancient, probably older than this country. The first women that grew cannabis, and women, they are the keepers of the Moroccan genetics. Women are at the heart of the cannabis industry in Morocco. Man, they lay down and they smoke pipes. Women do the job. The drying and the curing is a women's job, man, and you do a fantastic job. So there is a lot of knowledge. A lot of knowledge that it's telling you exactly the opposite of the curing and drying system here in America. Why not go there, meet with the people, and just soak those hundreds and hundreds of years? People, they think that Humboldt County growers are like legacy growers and they start everything. Cannabis industry started in Humboldt County 70 or 80 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm talking about...
We're talking about centuries, not decades.
I'm talking about in the 10th century, where the city of Fez, if you look at the Shriners, the hats and everything, that comes from the city of Fez in Morocco. In the 10th century, Fez was the largest city in the world. You want a trivia? The first university, still operating until today. The oldest university in the world is University of Al-Qarawiyyin. It's in Fez. It was made by a woman, Fatima al-Fihriya. A woman built that university. So just another stigma about women in Muslim countries. And no, forget about it. Travel. Fly from New York on a straight shot. You're landing in my hometown. Go and enjoy Casablanca, the movie. Humphrey Bogart and all of that. We still have the Rex Cafe, man. It's still there. You can still go and have a drink and enjoy a cigarette. Yeah. Literally, till today, you can still do that. It's like, here's the thing.
Is somebody here?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're good, guys. Here, we're just. I'm gonna wrap it up.
Okay.
We're good. Boom. Boom. No, wrong one. Wrong button. That's the right button. And that's episode 98. Little quick impromptu. Cut it down, shut it down. Ending here, but knowledge. That's what this has all been about. A particular set of knowledge, but wonderful either way. So. Have a good one, folks. Whatever that one may be.